You are listening to American Nightmare Radio, a program devoted to late-night accounts, recovered statements, and the kind of incidents that never get a clean ending. Tonight's file comes from Mason Hollow, West Virginia, a small town pressed between wooded ridges and old strip-mined hills, where the road lights are spaced far apart, and most backyards fade straight into trees. In October of 2018, Mason Hollow experienced a short, concentrated wave of sightings that locals still talk about in lowered voices. It started as a rumor, the kind people laugh at in daylight. Then it became a pattern, and by the time anyone wanted to call it a hoax, too many people had already seen the same thing. The first report was not made to police. It was made at a kitchen table. On the night of October 2nd, a 9-year-old girl named Rachel Turner walked into the living room at 1:41 a.m. and stood in front of the television like she didn't know where she was. Her mother later said Rachel's face looked drained, as if she'd been crying for hours. When asked what was wrong, Rachel didn't answer at first. She just stared down the hallway toward her bedroom and whispered, "He's breathing." Her father went down the hall, turned on the light, and searched the room the way you search when you're trying to prove a child wrong. Closet doors open, under the bed, behind the curtains, window locks. Nothing. The house was old, but secure. He told Rachel it was a bad dream, that the furnace made noises, that the wind came through gaps in the siding. He walked her back to bed and left the lamp on. Less than 15 minutes later, the scream came again, sharp, panicked, the kind that flips a person out of sleep before their brain is awake. This time, when her parents burst in, Rachel wasn't in bed. She was standing on the mattress, pressed into the corner, pointing at the darker corner beside her dresser, like she expected something to lunge out. She kept repeating, "Don't look away, don't look away." Her mother tried to comfort her, but Rachel wouldn't blink. She said it was still there, even though the room was empty. Then she described what she thought she saw. A tall shape, bent forward at the waist as if its back couldn't straighten, shoulders rolled inward, arms hanging too low. She said it didn't step into the light. It stayed where the shadows were strongest, and she could hear it breathing, slow, ragged, wet, like air passing through something damaged. They moved Rachel to the couch in the living room and kept the lights on. In the morning, her father walked the yard and found no footprints, no broken branches, no disturbed gravel at the windows. If there had been a person outside, there should have been something. There was nothing. 2 nights later, on October 4th, another child in the same neighborhood said something similar. 10-year-old Jacob Reynolds told his grandmother that the man in the trees was back. Their house sat near a thin line of woods behind a rusted chain-link fence. Jacob had been watching videos on his phone when he noticed movement beyond the glass. He said the figure wasn't standing in the yard. It was standing beyond it, just inside the trees, peeking from behind a trunk like it was hiding but still watching. He described the same posture, hunched, folded, the head angled forward as if listening. His grandmother walked to the window, looked out, and saw nothing. But she did hear something. A faint, uneven exhale that didn't sound like wind. She told herself it was an animal, maybe a deer close to the house, maybe a stray dog. Still, she locked every door and pushed a chair under the back knob, then sat in the living room until dawn, with the television on low. By the end of that first week, the story had a name. Not from outsiders, not from the internet, from Mason Hollow itself. People started saying, "The Boogeyman," the way you say a thing you don't want to invite closer. A few parents laughed it off, calling it a chain of nightmares passing from kid to kid. Others stopped laughing when their own children began sleeping with bedroom doors open, lights on, and blankets pulled tight over their heads. What made the rumor spread wasn't just fear. It was consistency. Different houses, different families. The same details repeated. A shape behind trees, a figure in the darkest corner of a room, and breathing that you could hear before you could see anything at all. By the second week of October, the stories in Mason Hollow stopped sounding like children's nightmares and started sounding like incident reports. On October 7th, just after 12:30 a.m., Daniel Mercer called 911 to report someone standing behind his detached garage. Daniel was not prone to exaggeration. He was 38 years old, worked maintenance at the high school, and had lived in the same house his entire life. He told dispatch he had stepped into his kitchen for a glass of water when he noticed the motion light flick on outside. Through the window above the sink, he saw a shape at the edge of the gravel drive. At first, he assumed it was a neighbor cutting across the property. But the figure did not walk. It did not shift. It stood partially concealed behind the corner of the garage, leaning forward slightly, as if peering around it. Daniel later said what unsettled him most was the posture. The back wasn't straight. It was bent, folded inward, like the spine had been forced into a permanent curve. The shoulders rolled toward the chest. The head seemed to hang too far forward. He grabbed a flashlight and stepped onto the porch. The beam swept across the yard. Nothing. But as he lowered the light, he heard it. A drawn-out inhale, followed by a shaky, uneven exhale. Not loud, not close, just close enough to feel wrong. Officers arrived within 10 minutes. They searched the yard, the garage, and the narrow strip of woods behind the property. No footprints were found in the soft earth. No broken twigs. No sign of forced entry anywhere on the block. That same night, 2 additional calls came from less than a mile away. One homeowner reported seeing a man crouched beside a row of shrubs near her front steps. Another described someone standing behind a tree across the street, partially hidden but clearly watching the house. In each case, by the time law enforcement arrived, the subject had vanished. As reports accumulated, similarities sharpened. Witnesses consistently described the same physical traits: tall but hunched forward, arms hanging longer than expected, head tilted at a slight angle. The face was never clearly visible. It appeared as an outline only, distorted, uneven, like something half-formed. And always the breathing. Several residents mentioned hearing it before seeing anything. A wet, labored rhythm that did not match wind or wildlife. One man described it as like someone breathing through a damaged lung. Another said it sounded as if the air was catching in a throat that couldn't fully open. On October 9th, the phenomenon entered homes. 14-year-old Nathan Cole had stayed up late playing a video game. Around 1:15 a.m., he muted the television when he heard what he thought was his father moving down the hallway. The house was quiet, and his parents were already asleep. Nathan opened his bedroom door. The hallway light was off. At the far end, where the corridor met the living room, something stood in the darkness. He assumed it was a trick of his eyes adjusting. Then he heard the breathing. Closer now, deeper, uneven. The sound seemed to fill the narrow space between them. Nathan later told investigators that the figure leaned slightly forward, as if trying to see him more clearly. It did not rush. It did not retreat. It simply remained there, half defined by shadow. He said the outline of its face was wrong. The jaw seemed too long, the head too narrow. The space where eyes should have reflected light appeared hollow. Nathan could not scream. He could not step back. After several seconds, though he described it as minutes, the shape withdrew into the living room and was gone. Nathan was taken to a hospital 2 days later after refusing to enter his bedroom again. He experienced tremors and episodes of dissociation when asked to describe what he saw. Doctors attributed it to stress-induced panic. By October 11th, Mason Hollow had shifted from skepticism to caution. Porch lights remained on through the night. Curtains were drawn before sunset. Some families began sleeping in living rooms together. Firearms were kept closer at hand. And yet, the figure never attempted to break a window, never tried a door handle, never approached a person directly. It watched, from tree lines, from corners, from the darkest part of a room. Then, on the night of October 12th, someone decided to challenge it. And that decision would end the sightings for good. 21-year-old Tyler Graham had grown tired of hearing about the thing in the trees. By the middle of October, nearly every conversation in Mason Hollow seemed to circle back to the same subject. People spoke in lowered voices at the grocery store. Parents compared notes in parking lots. Teenagers dared each other to walk home alone after dark. Tyler found it embarrassing. He had lived in the town his entire life. He worked at a lumber mill outside of Welch, and spent most weekends hunting or camping in the hills. He knew the woods. He knew what animals sounded like at night. He knew how fear could spread when people started feeding off each other's stories. On social media, he mocked the rumors openly. He posted that it was someone's uncle in a hoodie, or kids scaring themselves. He joked that Mason Hollow was turning into a ghost town without the ghost. When friends warned him to be careful, he laughed. On the night of October 12th, Tyler decided to prove his point. Shortly after midnight, he stepped onto the back porch of his parents' house with his phone and a flashlight. The property bordered a narrow strip of forest that sloped downward into an abandoned coal cut. It was the same stretch of trees several neighbors had mentioned in their reports. Tyler began recording. He joked quietly into the camera, narrating as he walked across the yard. He said he was going to meet the Boogeyman and bring back proof that nothing was there. The tone was casual, confident. He sounded more amused than nervous. At 12:46 a.m., the recording picked up a sound behind his voice. Breathing. Low, uneven. Not loud enough to overwhelm his narration, but present beneath it, like static. Tyler stopped speaking. The camera shifted. The flashlight beam swept across the tree line. For several seconds, nothing appeared. Then the light caught something behind an oak tree near the fence. A shape, partially concealed, leaning forward. The silhouette was tall, but compressed, as if its spine could not straighten. Its shoulders curved inward. Its head hung at an unnatural angle. The outline of its face was visible only as a warped shadow, narrower at the top, wider at the jaw. There were no visible features. The breathing grew louder. Tyler whispered, "What the hell is that?" The figure did not respond. It did not move toward him. It did not retreat. It remained in place, peering around the trunk as though studying him. Tyler took a step back. The flashlight shook. For a brief moment, the beam illuminated the space where eyes should have been. There was nothing there. Only darkness. The camera dropped. The audio captured Tyler shouting and running. Gravel shifted beneath his feet. A gate slammed. The recording ended abruptly. Neighbors later reported hearing screams and frantic knocking minutes afterward. Police found Tyler sitting on his front porch, wrapped in a blanket, staring at the yard. He did not respond when spoken to. His pulse was elevated. His hands were trembling. At the hospital, he was treated for shock and exhaustion. He refused to give a formal statement. Over the following weeks, Tyler withdrew completely. He stopped going to work. He deleted his social media accounts. He covered his bedroom windows with cardboard and aluminum foil and slept with the lights on. Family members said he spent hours sitting upright in bed, listening. When asked what he was listening for, he answered only, "It's still breathing." By December, Tyler had lost nearly 20 pounds. He rarely slept. He began experiencing hallucinations and panic attacks. Doctors prescribed medication and recommended inpatient treatment. He declined. On January 19th, 2019, Tyler Graham was found dead in his bedroom. The official report listed complications related to sleep deprivation and medication misuse. No evidence of violence was found. No suicide note was discovered. After his death, the sightings stopped. No more shadows in trees. No more breathing in hallways. No more figures in corners. Mason Hollow returned to its routines. But some residents say that on windless nights, when the town is quiet and the hills are dark, they still feel watched from beyond their yards. And some claim that if you stand still long enough, you can hear something breathing in the woods, waiting. You have been listening to American Nightmare Radio. Good night.